Everybody, every once in a while, I think it's important for us to understand some of the geopolitical things that are going on in the world today and how they relate potentially to your long-term well-being using the tool that we call money in order to build your best life. Many times, as we look at the headlines, we're not seeing the entire picture unless we take the time, which it's very difficult to do if you have a full-time job and it's not something that particularly interests you. But it can be very important for those who want to be informed and who want to position themselves to profit. My name is John Browning, and I'm the CEO and founder of Guardian Rock Wealth. You can find us at guardianrockwealth.com, and we help busy executives and founders and owners that don't have time to really go below the headlines and understand things to plan their wealth management so that they're actually using their money as a tool to build their best life. And oftentimes, these founders and very busy executives, much like I used to be when I used to work on Wall Street, tend to just quickly max out their 401k, kind of just make things really generic or take generic financial advice when really they've outgrown that. So let's jump right into what's going on right now. Let's first look at Venezuela. So in December, we got the reports that the United States had seized a sanctioned carrier carrying a bunch of oil. And then later, we got news that there was another tanker that had been seized by the United States, this time not a sanctioned carrier. And then, of course, in January 2026, that's this month, we got multiple reports, and it turned out to be absolutely true that the United States had conducted ground operations, captured Nicolas Maduro, and brought him to the United States, essentially taking control of Venezuela and all the Venezuelan assets. So, what this really is, in my opinion, is a regional power reset, not necessarily a routine sanctions or sanctions tweak or anything like that. So, the headlines continue to read and read at the time that it was all about oil. And certainly oil is a big part of the narrative and certainly very, very important. But why? Why did the United States do this? And why does it matter to the long-term investing public? So Venezuela really doesn't produce all that much oil, roughly 1% of the output of oil, but they are sitting on the largest proven oil reserves, according to 2023 study on that. It's about 303 billion barrels of proven reserves, and there could be a lot more. And those reserves are the extra heavy, high sulfur oil. So very different from what we get here in the United States from our shale oil operations, which is very sweet, crude. It doesn't have a lot of sulfur. It basically, you get it right out of the ground. It doesn't need much refining, which sounds like that would be easier, except if you've built an entire refinery around refining this heavy crude, which we have here in the United States. So most of our refineries are set up to do that because we get our oil from the Canadian oil sands, or much of it from there. So there's a lot of our infrastructure here in the United States as far as refining this oil that refines exactly this type of oil. So that's why that is important. And it's also important to think about who does that make us possibly less dependent on, and that would be Canada and the Canadian oil sands, since essentially the United States and Canada haven't been playing nice in the sandbox together of late. So that was a strategic move, in my opinion, because in 2024, the US imported 6.6 million barrels per day of crude Canadian oil, which was 62% of our imports. So think about that for a minute and how that could change given that we have direct access to Venezuelan oil, especially if we get them ramped up with our modern equipment and technology for extracting some of that oil in Venezuela. So you see how that might matter. And so translation there is Venezuelan barrels come back in size, and if they're reliably deliverable and directly compete with Canadian heavy barrels, then the Gulf Coast heavy crude pool shifts to a major bargaining power for the United States in their relationship with Canada. The other thing that we want to consider is that China had loaned Venezuela quite a lot, billions and billions of dollars, and against that loan were the assets of Venezuela, which the United States now owns, also potentially helping us in negotiations with China. And this is not a political statement at all. I'm just citing some facts that so that maybe folks can better understand the bigger picture here for the United States, and more importantly, for how you invest given all of the information. So the Associated Press has also reported what they described as unusually large U.S. force presence in the Caribbean region. Again, this looks to me as if it just reinforces the idea that this is a strategic theater of operation. So first thing this action does is it denies China and potentially Russia and Iranian assets, influence, and facilities in the Caribbean basin. Then it also gives us being the United States, a forward presence in the Caribbean sea lanes. So this goes beyond oil here to strategically making sure those lanes are open and quickly we can move goods and other things back and forth through the Caribbean region. So very, very important to the United States, and goes to the whole story about the Panama Canal region. Again, that's a whole different story that people have largely forgotten about. But I assure you that China has not forgotten about that deal that never really came to fruition, that the United States would purchase or take over the Panama Canal. But my opinion here is that that's still going on and is still a possibility. And that's actually much bigger than just the Panama Canal deal. That deal talks about and discusses many, many other ports throughout the world. But again, we haven't heard a lot about that lately, and that may be by design. Again, just an opinion and just throwing it out there. But we also have the ISR interdiction, so better maritime domain awareness, trafficking routes does give us a little bit more control over the drug trade potentially, and weapons trade, also very important, and other sanctioned cargo that has been going through the region. So that also is, in my opinion, a legitimate thing that we were able to get a little bit more control over with the action in Venezuela. Again, I am not saying whether it was wrong, whether it was right, or anything else. I'm just citing the facts and what actually happened and why it might not be just about oil. Also, Venezuela has long claimed mineral wealth, gold, iron ore, bauxite, coltan. There's all sorts of things that are actually there, but haven't been exploited to the extent that they may have been had they had better infrastructure and better ways of extracting that. The CSIS estimates that in 2024, Venezuela accounted for about just a little bit under 1% of the global gold production, and about not that much, about 0.10% of the global iron ore output. However, they believe that there is much more iron ore there if, again, they had the means to actually extract it and refine it. So the mining angle, and potentially, again, we don't have anything that actually proves this, but there's also talk that there might be quite a bit of rare earth materials there as well. So again, it's about much more than just oil, which is what really hit the headlines after all this happened. So the US doesn't really need Venezuela to be a top producer today, but it needs that optionality. I often talk about this with my clients, that optionality is one of the key components of a quality wealth management plan. And many times you go to your financial advisor and they're just talking about how they manage your portfolio, how big it is, how much you made or lost during the quarter or the year. And they're not talking to you about the very important parts of overall wealth management, such as tax management. And again, this optionality that comes with certain investments versus other investments. This is extremely important once you get to a higher level in your wealth management planning and a higher level in your assets that you have. So why do we really need Venezuela? Keep it defensible right here. But essentially, why did we really need Venezuela? I think the answer is yes, the minerals are nice, the cash flow might be nice, but not really anything of substance right now, but it's a bargaining chip. It gives us that optionality for sometime later down the road, and it's going to take a tremendous amount of investment. But investment in this infrastructure means construction, and that tends to boost things economically, not just for the United States, but also for United States companies. So it's not just helping Venezuelans with that construction, it's also helping the United States and their economy. It may also have something to do with helping the economic situation with our enormous debt problem here in the United States, giving us more assets to back that debt with and more things to frankly sell to raise money to pay for some of that debt. Now, we're not even talking about yet the Greenland situation, which we'll get into maybe on a different podcast or different video sometime. But I hope that helps you think through how maybe you should position yourself to profit. Remember, it's not just about oil. There's going to be so much spending that has to happen in order to really make a difference in the amount of oil coming from Venezuela. This is not a short-term issue. So ask yourself the question, who benefits sooner than another company that might benefit? Who and what companies might be positioned that maybe is not really in the headlines? So maybe not an energy company or a big oil company. And of course, we have our own ideas here at Guardian Rock Wealth, but we need to make sure we're not giving generic investment advice when we do these videos. But I think to position yourself long-term to profit, you need to really think through who really profits, and it may not be the ones that you're seeing in the headlines. So this is John Browning with Guardian Rock Wealth, guardianrockwealth.com. You can reach out to us if you would like. You can grab your phone and text the word LIFE, L-I-F-E, to 321-421-5213. You'll get one text. You won't get a bunch of other texts, just the one. It's going to give you access to a lot of different links with a lot of free information that you can just consume, or it also gives you the opportunity to schedule some time on our calendar. I hope that was helpful today. Again, this is John Browning, Guardian Rock Wealth, guardianrockwealth.com. Have a great day.